In our first video in this series, which is also our last video in this series, and I hope that any Christian can appreciate the irony of the first being last and the last being first. But in the first video of this series, I opened up by talking about creation, the 7 days of creation, and the Genesis flood. And I talked about how these are not literal historical events, in my view. Today, I want to take a closer look at Genesis chapter 1 and a little bit of Genesis chapter 2, looking at the 6 or 7 days of creation, however you want to view it. I'm Steve Perry. This is Biblical Anarchy. And today we're questioning the traditional view of Genesis 1 itself. Genesis 1 starts out in the beginning when God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. And we're using the New Revised Standard Version here. Um, we see this chaotic water world. It's flooded, it's formless, it's void, and there's a wind that's whipping the waters, and you can just picture this vast, chaotic world. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Now, my question is, to whom was God speaking there? Let there be light, right? He's speaking to the elements. He's commanding the elements to bring forth light. And as we move forward, we see this as a pattern, but even here in the New Revised Standard Version, some of this gets taken away from this because it then goes on to say that God saw the light was good. He separated the light from the darkness. And it says, God called the light day and the darkness he called night. Now, I much prefer the Art Scroll Tanakh translation of this. They say, God called to the light day and to the darkness he called night. So they're continuing the motif of God speaking to the elements and them bringing into existence. But here, it almost appears that he's naming the thing that he created, whereas in the Art Scroll Tanakh, he's still ordering it. He's saying, "You will be light, you will be dark." It goes on to day 2. Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters. God called the dome sky here, but in the other translation, God called to the dome, or they say firmament, sky. So he's speaking to the thing he created, telling it what it's there for. This continues on. He says, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered." But then when they are gathered, he calls the dry land earth, calls the waters seas. Again, I prefer the translation where he's speaking to them for a reason. When we get down here to the creation of man, then God said in verse 26, "Let us make humankind in our image according to our likeness." To whom is God speaking here? Now, depends on who you ask. If you ask the rabbis, he's speaking, and a lot of Christians, to be fair, he's speaking to the heavenly hosts, to the angels. If you ask some Christians, he's speaking to it's one of the members of the Trinity speaking to the others. I have a different view from both of these. My view is that God is speaking to the earth here. Let us make humankind in our image according to our likeness. So he's speaking to the earth because if we go forward to Genesis 2, God creates man from the dust of the ground, but then he breathes into him the breath of life. So man is this combination being. He's part dust of the ground, the physical, the earth, in the likeness of earth, but he has a piece of God, a spark of the divine breathed into him, the, dare we say, image of God. But what does this word image mean? If we click on the word here, and I'm using the wrong translation, but the word image often is used to represent an idol. So you have an image of Baal, for example. And in First Kings, we see this, or it might be Second Kings. I using a different translation. I can't pull up the actual words here and do the word search. But we're told that the people went in and destroyed the temple of Baal, and they smashed his image. Same Hebrew word here. The point that I believe is being made here is that we are the image, the idol of God. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but bear with me here. So, God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. To understand what I mean by God created man as his idol, we have to travel back in time and get an ancient cultural view. And in the Greek world and into the Roman world, the Jews were looked at with suspicion because in their temple, they had no image, they had no idol. They were believed to be atheists, right? What are you worshiping? You've got this temple, this house of worship. But in this house of worship, what are you worshiping? There's no image, there's no idol, there's no God. Um, they are the image, they are the idol, they are the representation of God. In the ancient world, the gods often that we find archaeologically, they have large eyes or large noses or large mouths because the people didn't actually worship the image. They worshiped, they paid homage in front of the image, but they didn't believe that the image itself, the idol itself, the thing of gold or of wood or of clay, they did not think that this thing was the actual God. Rather, it was the place where God could rest. So he could enter into this image and rest in there. And this is why they would pray towards the image. This is why they'd have images like this at their house. You never know when God will be out and about on a journey. He might need a place to stop and rest. If he sees an idol, an image of himself, that's a great place for him to rest. So you would definitely pray. You would have an altar here at the image, right? Because you're bringing your sacrifice to the God who is residing inside the image. This is the point of the text here, folks. God created humankind in his image. As the image of Baal would be in the temple of Baal at the altar, when you bring a sacrifice, you are sharing it with Baal. To the Jews, to the Hebrews, in this text here, in Genesis chapter 1, what we're seeing is the God of Israel experiencing his creation through his idols. So as we worship, as we bring our first fruits, etc., we are bringing the sacrifice to God, but are enjoying it with us. He is partaking in it by our eating it. We are the image, right? We are where God wants to come and rest. We are the thing that he enters to be able to enjoy his own creation, to be able to experience his own creation. This is what I believe the text is saying here. So as we read on further, we get to Genesis 2, verse 1, but this should really be a part of Genesis 1. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished in all their multitude. And on the seventh day, God finished the work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that he had done in creation. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. And this is where the chapter should end. Why doesn't it? Well, we have a tendency in the Abrahamic faiths to make the creation event all about us. We are the highlight of the creation. But in fact, John Walton has a book. He's a Christian. He's got a book called The Lost World of Genesis 1. I'll put a link down in the description. And he talks about this as a temple inauguration text. What does that mean? It means that God is creating earth as his temple. And what stops us from seeing that is two things. One, the way the chapter is divided here causes us to stop at the sixth day with the creation of man as if this is the culmination of the project, when in fact, on the seventh day, God rests. What does that mean? He was worn out, tired. Oh, that was a lot of work. I need a break. I'm going to take a day off. Nobody pray. No, that's not what he's saying here. He rests, right? He occupies. There's often in the in later on in the Torah we'll read that God will give you rest in the land, or he will give you rest from your enemies. What this means is just a peaceful existence. It means things are functioning properly. So God takes up his proper place, right? In his temple, this earth that he has created. He rests. Everything is functioning properly. Everything is doing what it's supposed to do. Everything is working the way it's supposed to work. God rests. He enters. He inhabits. He takes residence in his temple. And this is what I believe the text is saying here. I think John Walton, although I, of course, disagree with him on a lot of things, he's a Christian theologian. I certainly agree with him on this interpretation, and I thank him for the wonderful book because it was he's the one that helped me to see this. But this is really, in my view, what this passage is talking about. It's talking about the creation of earth as God's temple. The other thing that stops us from seeing this is that we tend to look at this linear, like the days 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, when in fact the days should be looked at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So on the first day, God creates light, right? But the sun, moon, and stars are created on the fourth day. He separates the waters and creates the sky on the second day, but the birds and the fish are created on the fifth day. And he creates the dry land and the vegetation on the third day, and the humans and animals on the sixth day. So we see these things are being created in a particular order to where we have the function first being created, and then the functionary, the thing that performs the function, being created next. And we really see this when he creates the lights in the dome of the sky in verse 14. And God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years, and let them be lights in the dome of the sky to light and to give light upon the earth." And it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And it was evening and there was morning, the fourth day. Well, here on the fourth day, we're getting the light separated from the darkness. But that was already done on the first day. And if God did it himself, what does he need the sun, the moon, and the stars? Like, how are they going to separate this if it's already been separated? The fact is, God is first creating the function, what it's going to do, right? Then he's creating the functionary, the thing that's going to do it. Again, this is a big problem if we view these as literal historical days. How do we have days and nights before we have a sun? But if we view this rather as a temple inauguration text, it winds up telling us a beautiful thing. God creates time before he creates the watch, the sun, right? And the ancients would look to the sun, and this is the God that regulates our days, right? There has to be some force controlling this sun to make the days so uniform and even. And the fact of the matter is, there is a force, but it is the force behind all the forces. Elohim, it is God that is controlling this. And this is what the text is telling us. It's saying that God created the heavens and the earth, and he created time before he created the mechanism of keeping time, right? So wherever you go and whenever you get there, God will be the God of the place at which you arrive, and he will be the God of the time in which you arrive there, because you are traveling in the temple of God. And the last thing that would be done in any temple would be the unveiling of the God for whom that temple was made. And we see the same thing here in this text. When God creates man in his image on the sixth, the final act of the final day of creation, God creates his idol, his image. This, to me, is a key understanding of who we are and why we're here from the view of of Genesis 1 here. We are here as the image of God so that God can experience his creation through us. When we look at a beautiful sunset, when we look at a beautiful landscape, when we appreciate just the cool of the evening, as we'll see later, God walking in the garden in the cool of the evening. When we see these things, when we appreciate these things, when we experience these things, God is able to experience these things through us. But only if we are in a right relationship with God. Genesis 1 is beautiful theology of God, and I appreciate it for that. And I'm hoping to bring this appreciation to people who haven't previously seen it and might appreciate it with me. I'm Steve Perry. This is Biblical Anarchy. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it on social media, subscribe to the channel. But whatever you do, don't just sit there. Do something.